I've noticed that the word drama gets thrown around a lot as of late. The best example being the Yandere dev drama. Merriam-Webster defines drama as a state, situation, or series of events involving interesting or intense conflict of forces. Personally, I don't feel this accurately describes the debacle surrounding Yandere dev, aka Ava Zephin. In reality, we had this information available to us for years. It only took someone to educate the public about this. This ultimately hit a peak when Rommel made a video about YanDev. Also, Rommel, rest in peace, my boy. Rest in peace. Now, I'm not exactly here to discuss the kind of stuff that YanDev has done in the past. Ultimately, I don't care about the stuff that he used to reveal about himself back in the day. I can understand that he used to be a pretty big cringe lord back in the day. I also don't think the way he used to express how much he liked women's assets to be a point of controversy for him. The simple fact is that it's human nature and he shouldn't really be shunned for it. That being said, he still does some things that I can't defend at all, such as staring at anime girls commenting about their large chests and making really gross slurping sounds. Ugh.
Those are some big busty boobies.
Like, you're welcome to do that in the privacy of your own basement, but when you do that while streaming, it's foolish to say the least. Also, he's a really sore loser. What's the matter, little fella? Bad at video games? But anyways, we aren't talking about that. What we are talking about is the stuff that Yandere dev prides himself on. His accomplishments he has made through Yandere Simulator. It's the basis for his entire persona, and ultimately, I do have some problems with this game. I feel that certain parts of it aren't being developed well or practically at all. So yeah, this is gonna be one of my category type videos. So let's do it! The main character of his entire game, the Yandere, is named Ayano, and I'll be completely honest that I don't like her backstory in the slightest. Essentially, from what I can gather, and I may be wrong on this, you never know, but Ayano is a girl born from a long line of women who, for one reason or another, are unable to feel emotions at all. They simply cannot emote, and at least with the case of Ayano's mother, are sadistic cold-blooded killers. Well, it's at least implied. I personally find it that this is a dramatic romanticism of the concept of children growing up to be murderers. I did a bit of research into the type of parents that raise children into becoming killers, and simply being exposed to violence and being aware of how to commit a murder isn't all that it takes to raise a murderer. Often, murderers in their youth are neglected and or abused by their parents. This mixing with a dose of mental illness can create a killer, likely because the treatments they've experienced implant certain thoughts and desires within them, and resorting to extremes to have these plans put into action. Not to mention, having violence be something of a non-issue and a regular thing in life also does create a killer. However, Ayano's interactions with her parents aren't the only thing that I have an issue with. I also find the reasons for Ayano pursuing senpai are very much something of face value and basic. Basically, the only reason why Ayano is in love with senpai is simply his presence sparks a light in her, causing her to feel emotions like a real human being, and that only she feels pleasant emotions around senpai. Now, this is a really corny and basic validation for why Ayano acts this way for senpai. That's the same type of stuff you'd see in like a romantic novel for teenage girls. Also, this heavily implies that the only reason why she wants to be with senpai in the first place is only for her own personal gain and essentially wants to use him because he actually gives her the ability to emote. This could possibly lead to an abusive relationship, and whilst this may be a sort of poetic symbolism tying into her long line of possibly abusive ancestors, I say possibly because this is all that I can infer analyzing Ayano's mother. Now, of course I have my own alternative to how Ayano should be written, and here are my ideas. Of course, there is not one way that you can write a character, but I do have a feeling that this makes at least sense psychologically. Ayano, growing up, would be constantly neglected by her parents as they are both hardworking Japanese citizens, and Ayano lives mostly by herself. And Ayano lives her life mostly alone. She is not very good at socializing and keeps to herself, unable to adequately make friends. However, because of this, she could possibly have occupied her abundance of free time experimenting and torturing stray animals. It may be cliché, but this would illustrate her merciless lust for harming living beings. When she does eventually come into contact with Senpai, his behavior and personality would captivate Ayano, and she falls in love with him so that she may obtain the type of attention and love that she seeks from her parents at a young age. This such is her entire reasoning for pursuing Senpai and killing all whom may pose as an obstacle. She finds it that killing may be the only way to solve her problems.
Change her wig, cut her dressing jig, pick at the one and only.
People have talked about it before, but they don't exactly talk about it to a full extent. At least I feel. The first rival, Osana, has been teased for quite some time now, and as of this time, has not been completed yet. And YanDev has a rather flimsy excuse for why this is. Essentially, he wants to implement literally everything else into the game before Osana is ready. That means all the clubs, all the personality types, everything. Thing is, you don't need to do that. And unfortunately, he has already done that. Personally, for a demo build, I would have only some club member students done. After all, not all clubs in school start immediately as the school year starts itself. Also, over time, you could have more students pop up in the school. Students do appear sometime after the year has started because of moving and, other reasons. This could not only delight the player with unlocking more characters as the game progresses, but will also add difficulty with more students that you will have to be mindful of. After all, if you have all 90 students ready at the beginning, this would clearly stagnate the game to a fault, because then the game would just become routine at that point, which isn't how a well-designed game functions. As the game progresses, it should attempt to test your knowledge and skill, providing a more interesting experience that helps keep you on your toes. That would not only be beneficial for the game's design itself, but also to you, YanDev, as you could develop more characters after the demo build.
Now you're gone, I've moved on, someone understands.
The goal of Yandere Simulator is to execute your rivals, no surprise there. However, with the game, that seems to be the only thing you can do. I feel that this makes it very limited as a sandbox game. Yes, most sandbox games do have a goal, and Grand Theft Auto they obviously want you to do the subsequent missions, and in Minecraft they do want you to get to the end and kill the Ender Dragon. However, these are not the only things that you can do in these games. You can go around unleashing ultimate rampage against all who lay in your wake. You can also customize your own looks. Basically, these games allow you to do a lot in them. And Yandere Simulator, there are indeed many things that you can do, but they only benefit you in the sense to help you defeat your rivals. I personally would like to see some customizable options for Ayano, to make her look different yet unique. And no, changing panties doesn't cut it. We need something a little more prominent in the character design and less stupidly perverted. In one video that will go down in history, YanDev expressed how he does not want help from any peoples younger than 18. This is some of the most ironic stuff I've heard in quite some time. Because simply put, some minors have skills that far exceed that of Yandere. There are several artists online that can produce really impressive art that I would consider superior to that of what I can do even. People like Ponder Sprocket and Atari, they are really great artists. Hell, check out this really cute Ayano icon I made. I think this would look great as the game's executable icon, but nah, I'm a minor. You don't want help from a minor, do you? Honestly, saying that no minor should be allowed to help you with your game is wholehearted, especially considering that minors are just as capable to help out with the game, are adults as just as likely to not. For instance, the theme that the delinquents have that YanDev commissions it sounds so generic. But hey, I mean, you could have commissioned Evil Grapes, he's like 15 or something, and I'm pretty sure he would have made a better song. Also, I showed some of YanDev's code to someone I know, and even he could admit that it looks bad. Hell, I could tell you that it doesn't exactly look right from the fact that he uses English words for colors instead of using the HTML code for them. Of course, I'm not a coder, but it does look a little off. Not to mention all of the else-ifs. Overall, I find it quite ironic that he hates children so much when people my age could literally do better at YanDev's job, or at least have a better attitude about it. Which, guess what we're talking about next?
Feels like my whole life's a whirlwind. Every time I see her, she's always somebody new.
Now, if there's one thing I like when I read comments, it's seeing people give me help on how I can improve these videos. Contrary to what you may think, I do really like these comments, and it gives me an idea on what I can work on to make these videos the best that they can be. However, it seems that YanDev may not share this same sentiment. For his first independent game project, Lunar Scythe, he had the honor of having Mike Z play his game. If you don't know who he is, he's the lead programmer of my favorite fighting game, Skullgirls. And when Mike Z gave him advice about how he could objectively increase the quality of the game, YanDev, then known as Ava Zeffin, was distraught. And look, I get it, I would be a little off-put if I showed my art to an artist that I did look up to and they expressed that they did not like it. The only thing is that Mike was actively trying to help you. Whilst code like this may impress your average person who doesn't know how to code at all, for a seasoned programmer like Mike Z, he can see the inherent flaws with it. Such is the same if I were to show a person an old drawing of mine that had bad proportions. They might think it looks good, but to other artists, including myself, I would see the structural issues with it. YanDev has not grown out of this mindset. He explicitly has stated that the reason why he does not like talking about his characters' personalities, because as I've expressed, they aren't exactly the best in the world. So he'd much rather talk about his gameplay and his code because less people can actually see the seams of it. After all, anyone can write. Like, not everyone can write good, but they can write. But you have to actively learn how to code and such. In addition, when he comes under fire, like as of recently, he tends to over-exaggerate the situation, stating how the majority of his fan base dislikes him, or that the only type of people who talk to him are hateful towards him, when I and many others would consider that this is not the truth, and that he actually has a fan base trying to defend him. I find this quite ironic when he has a character created to basically serve as a personification of his own fan base. The character Midori often asks YanDev a series of questions, however, some of these may be foolish in some eyes. And what does he do to said character in a video? He violently stabs them in the head! What? What? That is honestly a really disgusting way of illustrating your hatred for even a portion of your own fan base. May I remind you and him that his fans are the entire reason why he has the ability to make his dream game in the first place. And I get it, having a large following, you get a lot of emails and stuff, but that's the sacrifice you have to make for having a platform, for lack of a better word. You take the good with the bad, and with great power comes great responsibility, and a greater person to handle such. And unfortunately, I don't think that Yandere Dev is the kind of person that has the ability. And therefore, I feel he should probably not interact with his audience so closely.
I'm in love with my lost girlfriend. She's one that you just gotta see.
So pretty much, Yandere Dev himself isn't the best game developer out there in the world, and in my humble opinion, he does have some things to improve on. I simply hope that he gives his video a look and maybe he can create a truly quality title. And I hope that all of you, my subscribers, have enjoyed me stating my opinion as always. Thank you for following the development of this tumor on my brain.